The great assembly hall stretched out like a metal canyon, its walls rising hundreds of meters into the artificial sky of the orbital station. 10,000 seats filled the circular chamber, each occupied by a representative from the countless worlds of the Galactic Consul. The air hummed with translation devices, converting thousands of languages into comprehensible speech. At the center of it all stood a single human. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his dark suit looking plain and simple compared to the elaborate robes and biological displays of the alien delegates surrounding him. His face remained calm, almost expressionless, as he looked up at the High Council platform where the most powerful species in the galaxy sat in judgment. High Commander Zeralth rose from his seat, his massive form casting a shadow across the chamber floor. The Vraxian looked like what humans might call a bipedal rhinoceros, covered in thick armored plates that had evolved over millions of years. His species had conquered half the galaxy through sheer military might and had never known defeat. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the translation systems. "The matter of Earth has been decided," Zeralth announced, his tone carrying the weight of absolute authority. "The human species will comply with standard integration protocols. You will provide 40% of your adult population for labor assignments throughout Consul space. You will dismantle all military vessels and weapons platforms. You will open your planet for Consul oversight and resource extraction. You have 30 standard days to begin compliance." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. This was normal procedure. Young species always resisted at first, but they learned. They always learned. The alternative was extinction. Chen did not move. He did not show anger or fear. He simply looked up at Zeralth with the same calm expression he had worn since entering the chamber. "High Commander," Chen said, his voice quiet but clear. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, I must deliver a message to this assembly." "Speak then," Zeralth said, waving a massive hand dismissively. "Beg if you must. It will not change our decision, but the Consul is merciful. We will listen to your final words as a free species." Chen took a single step forward. The movement was small, but something about it made the nearest delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. Human body language was still strange to most of them, still unpredictable. "Humanity offers the Galactic Consul this warning," Chen said, and now his voice carried through the chamber with perfect clarity. "Do not fuck with Earth." The silence lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Then the laughter began. It started with the Vraxians, their deep, bellowing laughs shaking their armored frames. It spread to the Centauri delegates, their crystalline bodies chiming with amusement. The Hive Collective added their buzzing chorus. Within moments, the entire assembly had dissolved into mocking laughter. Even the typically reserved Milani observers shifted in their seats with what passed for amusement in their species. Zeralth laughed hardest of all, his massive chest heaving with each guffaw. "Did you hear that?" he called out to the assembly. "The humans threaten us. They warn us." He turned back to Chen, wiping moisture from his eyes. "Little human, your species controls one planet. One. The Vraxian Empire alone commands 12,000 worlds. The Consul represents 47,000 civilizations. You have no fleet capable of faster-than-light travel. Your weapons are chemical rockets and nuclear warheads. You are children playing with fire, and you dare threaten us?" Chen said nothing. He simply reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small data crystal. He placed it on the floor in front of him and took a step back. "That contains everything you need to know," Chen said. "I suggest someone review it before you take action. But the choice is yours." Zeralth bent down and picked up the crystal between 2 massive fingers, holding it up to the light as if inspecting a curious insect. "What is this? Your surrender terms? A plea for mercy?" "No," Chen said quietly. "It is a warning. The only warning you will receive." The Vraxian commander tossed the crystal to a nearby aide without looking at it. "Your warning is noted and dismissed. 30 days, human. 30 days, or we will take what we require by force." "The Consul has spoken." Chen nodded once slowly. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the now silent chamber. Every eye watched him go, some still gleaming with amusement, others uncertain. There had been something in his voice, something in the way he moved, not fear, not desperation, certainty. As the doors closed behind the human ambassador, the assembly erupted into discussion. Most delegates immediately began calculating their share of Earth's resources. Humanity had rejected the Consul's generosity, and now they would face the consequences. It was almost sad, really. Such a young species throwing away their chance at survival for pride. In the far corner of the chamber, in a section reserved for archival staff and junior observers, a small figure reached down and picked up something from the floor. Archivist Quillix belonged to the Milani, a species of small furry beings who served the consul as record keepers and historians. They were not warriors or politicians. They were observers, nothing more. But Quillix had noticed something the others had missed. When the Vraxian aide had carelessly tossed aside the human's data crystal, it had rolled across the floor and come to rest near the archival section. The aide had not bothered to retrieve it. Why would he? It was nothing. A desperate gesture from a doomed species. Quillix picked up the crystal and turned it over in their small, delicate hands. Their species had survived in the galaxy by being cautious, by paying attention to details others ignored. Something about the human ambassador had troubled Quillix. The way he had stood there, alone against 10,000 without fear. The absolute certainty in his voice when he delivered that crude warning. Perhaps it was nothing. Perhaps it was the bravado of a species too young to understand how small they truly were. But perhaps not. Quillix slipped the crystal into their pouch and made a note in their personal log. Later, when their duties were complete, they would review its contents. It was probably nothing important. Humans were known for theatrical gestures, for emotional outbursts. The crystal likely contained cultural information or perhaps artistic works meant to evoke sympathy. Still, Quillix could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. They had been an archivist for 70 standard years, had witnessed the integration of 24 species into the consul. They had seen fear, anger, desperation, and despair. They had never seen what they had seen in Ambassador Chen's eyes. They had never seen patience. That night, as the Vraxian Empire began assembling its enforcement fleet, as thousands of warships prepared to teach humanity its place in the galactic order, Quillix sat alone in their small quarters and inserted the crystal into a reader. The first file that opened was labeled simply, The History of Human Warfare, Part 1, Early Conflicts. Quillix began to read. They would not sleep for 3 days. The Vraxian war fleet assembled in the orbital yards above their homeworld like a storm gathering strength. 3,000 warships, each one massive enough to crack a moon, each one crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. The sight was meant to inspire awe and terror in equal measure. It had worked on every species that had seen it before. High Commander Zeralth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Fist of Dominion, watching the final ships join the formation. 27 days had passed since the human ambassador had delivered his pathetic warning. 27 days, and Earth had sent no communication, no plea for reconsideration, no surrender. "They are fools," said Sub-Commander Krath, standing beside Zeralth at the observation window. "They believe we will not follow through with our threat." Zeralth snorted, a sound like grinding stones. "Or they are too primitive to organize a response. Their planet has hundreds of separate governments. Perhaps they are still arguing among themselves about what to do." He turned away from the window. "It does not matter. Today they learn what happens when a species defies the consul." The fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared from Vraxian space. The journey to Earth would take 6 hours. Zeralth spent the time reviewing the compliance protocols. The initial assault would disable Earth's communications and power infrastructure. Non-lethal but devastating. Then the landing forces would secure major population centers. Resistance was expected, but it would be brief. Humans were soft, weak creatures. They would break quickly. While the fleet traveled through the darkness between stars, Archivist Quillix sat in their quarters, staring at a screen with wide, horrified eyes. They had spent the last 27 days reading the human data crystal. They had barely eaten. They had not slept more than a few hours each night. Every time they tried to rest, their mind filled with the images and information they had absorbed. The crystal contained thousands of files. Military histories, tactical analyses, weapon specifications, cultural studies. Quillix had started at the beginning with ancient human history, expecting to find the usual story of tribal conflicts and territorial disputes that all species experienced in their youth. What they found instead was a nightmare. Humans had been at war with each other for their entire recorded history. Not occasional wars, not brief conflicts over resources, constant, continuous warfare. Even during periods they called peace, Humans maintained standing armies, developed new weapons, trained for the next conflict. War was not an aberration for humanity. It was their natural state. Quilix had read about the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 human warriors held off an army of hundreds of thousands. They had read about the Mongol conquests, where human cavalry armies had conquered half their known world. They had read about the World Wars, where humans had developed industrial-scale killing and deployed it against their own species. The numbers were incomprehensible. In their Second World War alone, humans had killed over 60 million of their own kind. The Milani species had not lost 60 million individuals in their entire recorded history spanning 12,000 years. But the worst revelation was still to come. Quilix had reached the section on human weapon development. Nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons. Weapons designed not just to kill, but to ensure that nothing could live in the target area for generations, and humans had built these weapons knowing they could destroy their own planet. They had even deployed some of them against each other. The file on mutually assured destruction had made Quilix physically ill. Humans had built enough nuclear weapons to destroy their planet dozens of times over, aimed them at each other, and simply waited. For decades, both sides knowing that if anyone attacked, everyone would die. And they had called this peace. What kind of species could live like that? Quilix had tried to present their findings to their superiors. They had requested an emergency session with the High Council. They had begged anyone who would listen to review the data before the fleet reached Earth, but no one took them seriously. Quilix was a junior archivist, a member of a prey species with no military tradition. What could they possibly know about warfare that the mighty Vraxian Empire did not? The request was denied. The fleet continued on its course. Quilix sent one final message to the Consul's central archives, uploading all the human data with the highest priority tag they could authorize. Then they sent a coded message to Ambassador Chen's last known location, though they did not know if it would reach him in time. The message was simple. I am sorry. I tried to warn them. The Vraxian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Before them hung Earth, a blue and white sphere turning peacefully in the void. Scanners immediately began mapping the system, searching for defensive platforms, fleet positions, military installations. They found almost nothing. A few small orbital stations, some satellites, scattered civilian traffic between Earth and its moon, between Earth and Mars. No massive defense platforms, no hidden fleet, no ring of automated weapons like every other civilized world maintained. Scanners must be malfunctioning, Krath said, his voice uncertain. Run full diagnostics. The diagnostics came back clean. The readings were accurate. Earth truly was this defenseless. It made no sense. Even the most primitive species usually manage some kind of orbital defense. Had the humans simply given up? Zralth felt a moment of doubt, a whisper of unease that he immediately crushed. Humans were weak. Their ambassador had been bluffing. This empty void of defense proved it. He had assembled 3,000 warships to subdue a planet protected by nothing but harsh words. All ships, Zralth commanded, his voice booming through the fleet communication network. Advance to attack positions around the third planet. Prepare compliance weapons. Target their major cities and communication centers. This will be over quickly. The fleet moved forward, a wall of metal and firepower sliding through the darkness toward Earth. The formation was perfect, the discipline absolute. The Vraxian military machine in motion, unstoppable and inevitable. Zralth opened a communication channel to Earth's surface. People of Earth, this is High Commander Zralth of the Vraxian Empire, acting on behalf of the Galactic Consul. You were given 30 days to comply with integration protocols. You have refused. Your defiance ends now. We will disable your infrastructure and occupy your major population centers. Resistance is futile. Surrender now and casualties will be minimal. For a moment there was only static. Then a voice came through, calm and clear. 'Twas Ambassador Chen. High Commander Zralth, Chen said, and Zralth could hear something in the human's voice. Not fear, not anger. Something else. Something that made Zralth's skin prickle beneath his armor. You were warned. You chose not to listen. What happens next is on you. Fire compliance weapons, Zralth ordered. All ships commence attack. 3,000 warships powered up their electromagnetic pulse weapons simultaneously. The wave of energy would sweep across Earth's surface, disabling every electronic device. collapsing their power grid, sending their primitive civilization back to the Stone Age in seconds. Then the real work would begin. But before a single ship could fire, something changed. Every scanner on the Vraxian flagship began screaming warnings at once. Thousands of contacts appearing from nowhere. The civilian stations around Earth unfolded, revealing themselves as heavily armed weapons platforms. The moon itself opened up, its surface splitting to reveal launch bays that had been hidden beneath false craters. Mars, which had appeared nearly empty, suddenly showed thermal signatures by the thousands. And the asteroid belt, that innocent ring of rocks that every system possessed, began to move with purpose, evasive action. Zralth roared, but it was already too late. Earth had not been defenseless. Earth had been waiting. The first salvo came from the moon. Hundreds of railgun rounds, each one traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance to the Vraxian fleet in seconds. The rounds had been accelerated through magnetic tunnels built into the lunar surface over decades, hidden beneath a thin layer of regolith and false crater patterns. No energy weapons to give away their positions. No heat signatures to detect. Just kinetic projectiles traveling so fast that they hit like small asteroids. 17 Vraxian warships simply ceased to exist in the first 3 seconds of combat. One moment they were mighty vessels of war, the next they were expanding clouds of vaporized metal and organic matter. Their shields had not even had time to activate. "Return fire!" Zralth screamed, gripping the arms of his command chair as the fist of Dominion rocked from a near miss. "All batteries target the lunar surface." The Vraxian fleet began firing, their energy weapons lighting up the void like a second sun. Beams of concentrated plasma lanced toward the moon, striking with enough force to melt mountains. The lunar surface erupted in massive explosions, dust and rock fragments flying into space. But the railguns kept firing. Sub-Commander Krath was staring at his tactical display in disbelief. "Commander, the asteroid belt. The asteroids are moving under power. They are not asteroids. They are ships. Thousands of ships." Zralth looked at the display and felt something he had not experienced in 40 years of warfare. Fear. What they had assumed were asteroids were hollowed-out rocks, each one containing a ship, a weapons platform, or worse, and they were all moving toward the Vraxian fleet with clear purpose. As he watched, hundreds of them opened fire simultaneously. The projectiles were not sophisticated. They were chunks of iron and nickel, accelerated to high velocity by simple mass drivers. But there were so many of them. The Vraxian point defense systems, designed to stop guided missiles and energy weapons, had not been built to handle thousands of unguided solid projectiles. It was like trying to stop a sandstorm with a net. Ships began dying by the dozens. A cruiser took 3 impacts in rapid succession and broke apart, its hull fragmenting like pottery. A destroyer simply disappeared when a 2-ton iron slug punched through its reactor core. All across the fleet, warships that had served the Empire for centuries were being reduced to debris. "Focus fire on Mars," Zralth ordered. Mars had fewer defenses than the moon, or so the scans suggested. If they could eliminate one planet's worth of weapons, they might still win this. "All ships concentrate beams on the Martian surface." The fleet redirected their fire toward the red planet. Energy weapons powerful enough to boil oceans focused on the Martian colonies. The surface began to glow under the bombardment. Habitat domes burst like bubbles. Mining facilities melted into slag. Then Mars launched its real weapons. They looked like insects at first, tiny objects swarming up from the planet's surface by the thousands. Zralth's tactical officer identified them as drones, each one no larger than a Vraxian hand. Autonomous hunter-killers guided by artificial intelligence and moving in coordinated swarms. "Deploy point defense," Krath said, his voice now tinged with panic. Wide dispersal pattern. The Vraxian ships began firing in all directions, trying to swat the incoming drones out of space. They destroyed hundreds, then thousands. But for every drone they killed, 10 more appeared. And these things were smart. They learned. They adapted. They began using the debris from destroyed Vraxian ships as cover, hiding behind chunks of armor plating and drifting hull sections. When the drones reached the fleet, they attached themselves to ship hulls and burrowed. Each one carried a small explosive charge, barely enough to crack armor on its own. But when 50 drones detonated simultaneously in the same location, they could punch through to the interior. And once inside, they found crew compartments, life support systems, and vital equipment. A battleship lost atmosphere from dozens of hull breaches, its crew dying in seconds. A carrier's launch bays decompressed, killing everyone inside and destroying the fighters before they could deploy. All across the fleet, ships were being eaten alive by swarms too small to effectively target. Zroth was beginning to understand the true nature of his mistake. Humans did not fight like Vraxians. They did not meet strength with strength. They used every advantage, exploited every weakness, and fought without honor or mercy. These were not warriors. These were survivors. Predators who had clawed their way to the top of their planet's food chain by being more ruthless than anything else that lived. "Commander," Krath said quietly, staring at his console, "I am detecting unusual energy readings from all our ships. The reactor cores. Something is happening to the reactor cores." Zroth pulled up the engineering displays. Every ship in the fleet was showing the same pattern. Their fusion reactors were fluctuating, power levels rising beyond safety limits. The containment fields were failing. All of them. At the same time. "How?" Zroth whispered. "How is this possible?" The answer came from a transmission on the emergency channel. Ambassador Chen's voice, still calm, still measured, speaking to him across the void. "Did you wonder why we accepted console technology so readily, Commander? Why we integrated your computer systems into our infrastructure so quickly? Why we never complained about the protocols you made us follow?" Chen paused, letting the implications sink in. "We have been inside your systems since the first day we made contact. Every ship you build, every station you construct, every weapon you design. We know how it all works, and we know how to break it. Quantum entanglement." Zroth finally understood. Humans had developed a way to affect particles remotely, instantly across any distance, and they had used it to plant kill switches in every piece of console technology, including the reactors on every Vraxian warship. "You cannot do this," Zroth said, his voice hollow. "You will kill thousands, tens of thousands." "You came here to kill billions," Chen replied. "We are being merciful. Your flagship's reactor has been isolated. You will survive. The rest of your fleet will not. Take your ship and leave. Tell the consul what happened here. Tell them what happens when they fuck with Earth." Zroth looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for orders, waiting for him to find a way out of this impossible situation. But there was no way out. They had walked into a trap 47 years in the making, and it was closing around them like a vice. "All ships," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Retreat. Full power to engines." Emergency jump 2. The first reactor went critical. Then another. Then dozens, then hundreds. The Vraxian fleet began tearing itself apart from the inside. Fusion reactors becoming miniature suns as containment fields collapsed. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, each one carrying hundreds of crew to their deaths. Zroth watched it happen. Watched 3,000 warships, the pride of the Vraxian Empire, reduced to glowing debris in the span of 14 minutes. The greatest military disaster in recorded galactic history, happening right before his eyes. When it was over, only the Fist of Dominion remained intact, floating alone in a graveyard of its own making. The ship was damaged, engines barely functional, weapons offline. But alive, deliberately spared. "Return to Vraxian space," Zroth ordered, his voice empty of emotion. "Maximum speed." As the crippled flagship limped away from Earth, Zroth looked back at the blue planet one final time. It looked so peaceful from here, so harmless. But he knew the truth now. Behind that beautiful facade lived monsters. Monsters who had smiled and played nice while secretly learning how to destroy everyone who threatened them. The humans had not been preparing for defense. They had been preparing for war. Totalva, the kind of war that Zroth's species had never imagined, because they had never needed to. The Vraxians had always been the strongest. They had never been prey. Humans understood what it meant to be prey, and they had decided long ago never to be prey again. The emergency session of the Galactic Consul convened 18 hours after the destruction of the Vraxian enforcement fleet. The Great Assembly Hall, usually filled with casual debate and political maneuvering, now hummed with tension and barely controlled panic. 10,000 delegates filled the seats, but the noise level was wrong. Instead of the usual roar of conversation, there were only whispers. Frightened whispers. High Commander Zroth stood in the center of the chamber, his armor scorched and dented, his bearing no longer proud but defeated. He had delivered his report in a flat, emotionless voice. 3,000 ships destroyed, nearly 2 million crew dead or missing. The Sol system still firmly in human control. The greatest military fleet ever assembled by a single species, wiped out in less than 15 minutes. Some delegates refused to believe it. Surely the Vraxian commander was exaggerating or covering up his own incompetence. But the data did not lie. Multiple independent sensors had recorded the battle from long range. Trading ships at the edge of the system had captured footage. The evidence was undeniable. Humans had destroyed the Vraxian fleet with barely any losses of their own. Counselor Thex of the Centauri Collective rose from his seat, his crystalline body catching the light and scattering it in angry reds and oranges. This cannot stand. We cannot allow a single planet to defy the will of the Consul and succeed. If other species see this, they will think resistance is possible. The entire galactic order will collapse. Murmurs of agreement rippled through certain sections of the chamber. The older, more powerful species saw the threat clearly. If humanity could resist, others might try. The system that had maintained peace, order, and profit for thousands of years was at risk. But other voices rose in opposition. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach," said Ambassador Quelm of the Trader League, her tentacles gesturing cautiously. "The humans warned us. We ignored that warning. The deaths are regrettable, but we forced their hand. They are dangerous." Thex shot back. "You saw the report. They have been infiltrating Consul systems for nearly 5 decades. They have weapons we never imagined. They think like predators, not like civilized beings. We must eliminate this threat before it grows." In the archival section, Archivist Quillix stood slowly, their small form barely visible among the larger delegates. They had never spoken in a full assembly before. Junior archivists did not address the Consul, but they could no longer stay silent. "Request to speak," Quillix said, their voice amplified by the chamber's systems. "I have critical information regarding the human situation." Thex turned his glowing eyes toward the small Milani. "An archivist? What could you possibly contribute to a military discussion?" "Context," Quillix replied simply. "I have studied the data crystal provided by Ambassador Chen. I tried to present my findings before the attack, but was denied. Please allow me to show you what I have learned." The chamber fell silent. Finally, the council chair, an ancient being known only as the Keeper, gestured for Quillix to proceed. "Speak, Archivist. The Consul will hear you." Quillix activated the holographic display system, and the center of the chamber filled with images. First came maps of Earth, showing the various human nations and empires throughout history. Then came battle footage, grainy and primitive at first, then clearer as human technology advanced. The world wars, nuclear explosions, tanks and aircraft and soldiers locked in combat. Humans are the only known species in the galaxy that evolved as persistence predators. Quillix began, their voice steady despite their fear. "Do you understand what that means? It means they are built to hunt. To chase prey across vast distances until it collapses from exhaustion. To never give up, never stop, never accept defeat." More images appeared. Ancient humans with spears bringing down animals 10 times their size. Cave paintings showing coordinated hunts, tools designed for killing. Every major human culture independently across their planet developed sophisticated warfare, not as a last resort, but as a fundamental part of their existence. They have been fighting each other for 50,000 years. They have refined violence into an art form. Quillix brought up more data, charts showing human population growth despite constant warfare, graphs displaying the exponential advancement of human weapon technology, videos of human soldiers training, fighting, dying, and training again. Most species in the Consul evolved as prey animals or peaceful herbivores. We developed technology to escape predators, to build safe communities, to cooperate. Humans developed technology to hunt more efficiently. Their first tools were weapons. Their first organized social structures were hunting parties and war bands. The chamber was completely silent now. Every eye was fixed on the display, watching images of human warfare spanning millennia. The Mongol invasions, the Roman legions, trench warfare, strategic bombing, nuclear submarines lurking in dark water, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy continents. They survived multiple extinction-level events, Quillix continued. Ice ages that would have killed our species. Volcanic winters, disease, famine, and each time they came back stronger. They learned. They adapted. They prepared for the next threat. New images appeared. The Cold War. Two human superpowers, each with enough nuclear weapons to destroy their planet several times over, staring at each other across a line neither dared cross, but neither backing down either. For decades. They call this mutually assured destruction, Quilix said, their voice filled with a kind of horrified awe. They lived under the threat of total extinction for generations, and they simply accepted it. They went to work, raised families, built societies, all while knowing that at any moment everything could end. What kind of species can function under that kind of pressure? Counselor Thex tried to interrupt, but the Keeper raised a hand for silence. Quilix continued. When humanity joined the Consul, they seemed weak, primitive. We classified them as Category 4, minimal threat. But we were wrong. Humans were not weak. They were being careful. They were learning, studying us, finding our weaknesses, preparing. The display shifted to show human infiltration efforts, diplomatic missions that placed humans on hundreds of worlds, trade agreements that gave them access to Consul technology, cultural exchange programs that taught them languages and customs, marriage and reproduction with compatible species, all seemingly innocent, all part of a larger strategy. Humans did not see the Consul as an alliance to join, Quilix said quietly. They saw us as a potential threat to assess, and they spent 47 years preparing for the day we might become an actual threat. The Sol system's defenses were not built in response to our ultimatum. They were built from the moment humans gained access to advanced technology. They have been ready for this war since before most of us realized there might be a war. The implications settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Humanity had been preparing for war while smiling and shaking hands and attending diplomatic functions. They had been planning the destruction of the Consul's military might while trading goods and sharing culture. They had never trusted the Consul, not for a single moment. We have three choices, Quilix said. First, we can attempt to destroy humanity before they become a greater threat. Second, we can leave them alone and hope they never turn their attention to conquest. Third, we can accept them as equals and hope that cooperation serves their interests better than conflict. Thex immediately seized on the first option. We must act now while we know where they are. Assemble every fleet in Consul space. Overwhelm them with numbers. Glass their planet from orbit and be done with it. And what if we fail? Ambassador Quelm asked. What if they have prepared for that scenario too? What if attacking them with our full strength only teaches them that we are their enemies? That we will never allow them peace? What then? Then they were always going to be our enemies, Thex argued. Better to fight now on our terms than wait for them to grow stronger. The debate raged for hours. Some species called for immediate military action. Others urged caution. The more peaceful civilizations simply wanted the whole situation to go away. Finally, the Keeper called for a vote. Not a simple majority, but a full referendum requiring a 2/3 consensus. The question was simple. Should the Galactic Consul declare war on humanity with the goal of complete elimination of the species? The voting took 3 hours. Each species cast its vote, some quickly, others only after lengthy internal deliberation. Quilix watched the tally climb, their small hearts sinking with each vote in favor of war. When the final count was announced, the result was clear. 6,247 in favor of war. 3,892 against. The resolution passed. The Consul would assemble the largest military fleet in galactic history. Every member species would contribute ships, weapons, and troops. They would converge on Sol system and eliminate the human threat once and for all. No mercy, no second chances, no warning. Just overwhelming force applied until nothing remained. As the assembly began discussing logistics and fleet composition, Quilix quietly left the chamber. They had done everything they could. They had presented the facts, explained the danger, tried to make the Consul understand. But fear and pride had won out over reason. In their quarters, Quilix sent a message to Earth. It was probably treason. They would likely face punishment if discovered, but they had to. The Consul Armada assembled over a period of 6 weeks, drawing ships from every corner of known space. It was the largest military gathering in recorded history, 47,000 warships of every design and configuration, representing 200 different species and their unique approaches to warfare. Carriers and battleships, destroyers and dreadnoughts, support vessels and strike craft by the millions. The fleet stretched across space for hundreds of thousands of kilometers, a wall of metal and firepower that could darken a sun. The plan was simple. Jump to the edge of Sol system, advance in overwhelming formation, destroy everything. If humanity tried to negotiate, ignore them. If they tried to surrender, ignore them. The vote had been clear. Humanity was to be eliminated, their planet reduced to molten slag, their existence erased from the galaxy as a warning to any other species that might think to defy the Consul. The fleet made the jump together, their faster-than-light drive synchronized to bring them all to Sol system simultaneously. It was meant to be an impressive display, an unavoidable show of force. They emerged from faster-than-light travel and found the system empty, not defensively positioned. Not fortified. Empty. Earth's orbit showed no stations, no weapons platforms, no defensive satellites. Mars appeared abandoned. The moon was dark and silent. Even the asteroid belt, which had been so deadly in the previous engagement, showed no signs of activity. The millions of humans who had lived and worked in the Sol system had simply vanished. Admiral Krenth of the Combined Fleet, a veteran Centauri commander chosen to lead the Armada, studied the scanner readings with growing unease. Run full spectrum analysis. Search for cloaked ships, hidden bases, anything. The scans came back negative. If there were hidden defenses, they were using technology far beyond anything the Consul possessed. Or there were no defenses at all. Perhaps they evacuated, suggested Captain Weirn of the Hive Collective. Perhaps they saw our fleet assembling and fled. They could be hiding in deep space, hoping we will not find them. No, Krenth said slowly. Humans do not run. We learned that from the previous engagement. This is something else. He was right to be worried. At that exact moment, across 200 different homeworlds and 3,000 Consul installations, things began to go wrong. On the Centauri homeworld, the planetary power grid flickered and died. Backup systems activated, then failed. Within minutes, a civilization that had not experienced darkness for millennia was plunged into chaos. Communications went down. Transportation systems stopped. Life support in underground cities began to fail. On Vraxia, the automated defense network suddenly identified civilian population centers as enemy targets and opened fire. Thousands died before emergency protocols could shut the system down. But the emergency protocols did not work. Nothing worked. The machines no longer responded to commands. On Hive Colony 7, something infected the collective's neural network. The Hive species shared a group consciousness. Millions of individuals connected in perfect harmony. Now that harmony turned to screaming discord as corrupted data flooded through their mental links, driving whole populations mad. Across Consul space, identical scenes played out. Infrastructure failing, defenses turning on their creators, computer systems becoming hostile, supply chains collapsing, medical facilities shutting down. Every system, every network, every piece of technology that had been built or upgraded in the last 47 years suddenly revealed hidden programming, buried deep and activated simultaneously. Humans had not spent the last 5 decades just learning Consul technology. They had been infiltrating it, subverting it, preparing it to be turned against its creators. Every ship sold to the Consul, every computer system shared as a gift, every upgrade and improvement suggested by helpful human engineers, all of it had been compromised. In Sol system, Admiral Krenth's fleet began receiving emergency transmissions from home. Dozens at first, then hundreds, then thousands. Every species in the Armada was reporting critical failures back in their territory. Worlds going dark. Stations losing life support. Ships in dock exploding without warning. Fall back, someone shouted over the command channel. We need to return home. Our families are dying. Hold formation, Krenth ordered, but his voice lacked conviction. His own homeworld was one of those sending distress calls. His own people were suffering. Every commander in the fleet was hearing the same pleas for help. Then the Sol system sprang its own trap. The empty system had never been empty. Ships began appearing, shedding stealth fields that should not have been possible. Millions of small craft, each one automated, each one expendable. But they were not attacking. They were broadcasting. Holographic projectors activated throughout the Consul fleet. The image of Ambassador Chen appeared on every ship in every language, impossible to shut off or block. You were warned, Chen said, his voice echoing through 47,000 warships. Twice you were warned, and twice you chose violence. Now you will learn why predators do not threaten humans. Now you will learn what happens when you back a cornered animal into a corner and give it time to prepare. Behind Chen, images began playing. Human infiltrators embedded in Consul society for decades. Some had undergone genetic modification, passing as other species. Some had married into alien families, their children half-human hybrids positioned in critical roles. Some had simply been overlooked, dismissed as unimportant because they were just humans. We are everywhere, Chen continued. Your governments, your militaries, your corporations, your families. We have been inside your society since the day you let us in, and you never noticed, because you thought we were weak. You thought we were primitive. You thought we could be controlled. The images shifted to show weapon systems, things that should not exist, should not be possible. Stellar manipulators that could weaponize a star. Self-replicating nanomachines that could consume matter and convert it to more of themselves. Biological weapons tailored to each species' unique biology, capable of wiping out entire populations while leaving others untouched. We could destroy you, Chen said quietly. Right now, today, we could end every species in the Consul. We have the weapons. We have the positioning. We have had decades to prepare. But we do not want genocide. We want what we have always wanted. To be left alone, to live in peace, to not be threatened or enslaved or treated as lesser beings. The images disappeared, leaving only Chen's face. Around him, the Consul fleet was beginning to fracture. Ships were breaking formation, their crews panicking as more emergency transmissions arrived from home. A Vraxian destroyer simply fled, jumping to faster-than-light speed without authorization. Others began to follow. Here are our terms, Chen said. The Terran Accords. Humanity joins the Galactic Consul as a full member with equal status. No probationary period, no restrictions. Full voting rights. Additionally, humanity assumes the role of guardian species. We will protect smaller civilizations from exploitation. We will enforce fair treatment of all Consul members, and we will have veto power over any decision that threatens sapient life. This is outrageous. Admiral Krenth found his voice broadcasting back to the human ships. You cannot dictate terms to us. You are one species that has your entire civilization by the throat, Chen replied. Admiral, your homeworld's life support is failing. You have approximately 6 hours before casualties reach the millions. Every species in your fleet faces similar crises. You can accept our terms and we will restore your systems immediately, or you can refuse and you can watch everything you have built collapse into chaos. You would commit genocide over political power? No, Chen said, and now his voice was hard, cold. We would prevent you from committing genocide against us. You came here to erase humanity from existence. We are simply ensuring that never happens again, not to us and not to any other species that you deem unworthy of equal treatment. Krenth looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for orders. But what orders could he give? The fleet could attack, but Earth's defenders were already in position and clearly prepared. The fleet could stand its ground, but their worlds would die while they waited. The fleet could retreat, but they would return to find their civilizations in ruins. There was only one choice that saved lives. Consul Fleet, this is Admiral Krenth. Stand down. Do not engage human forces. Repeat, stand down. He turned to face Chen's image directly. Humanity, we accept your terms. The Terran Accords will be ratified. Please restore our systems. Chen nodded slowly. Restoration will begin immediately. But understand, Admiral, this is not a negotiation. This is a new reality. The galaxy has changed. The old order, where strong species dominated weaker ones, where might made right, where entire civilizations could be enslaved on the whim of the powerful, that order is over. Humanity will ensure it stays over. Across Consul space, systems began coming back online. Power grids restored. Defense networks returned to normal operation. The Hive Collective's neural network cleared. Life support systems resumed function. The crisis passed as quickly as it had begun, leaving no doubt that humans had been in complete control the entire time. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.